Welcome to Season 6 of the RAG podcast. Now, for those of you who don't know, the RAG stands for Recruitment Agency Growth, and this show has been around since early 2019. And every week, we are obsessed with finding out how the world's most successful and innovative recruitment agencies and their founders have got to where they are today. In Season 6, alongside the founder's story and the inside information of that business, I also want to focus on the reality of today's economy. There is so much noise about this inevitable recession that we find ourselves in right now. And where it's going to go, is it really having an impact on the recruitment sector? Are they seeing any change in job flow? Are they seeing any change in candidate control or activity? What is going on? I want to find out. So every single week, I want to forget the propaganda, forget the noise. I'm going to speak to a real life recruitment owner and find out what is going on in their business. I will bring it to you every single Wednesday from 12 o'clock across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. Hey guys, on this week's episode of the RAG podcast, I've decided to do something different. Okay, you may or may have not have heard that I've been away for the last few weeks. I got married. I've got a nice little tan and I've got a nice ring on the finger. As a result of that, I haven't interviewed any recruitment owners for a couple of weeks, so I haven't got a fresh episode for you. There will be a brand new episode next week. However, this week, I want to bring back to life an episode I recorded a few years ago. An episode that has probably yielded the most views and plays and been spoken about the most across the sector. And that was with James Brown, the CEO of the Levin Group. Now, the Levin Group is a group of recruitment businesses known as Storm 2, Storm 3, Storm 4, Storm 5, and Storm 6. Launched in 2019, I believe. I interviewed James in early 2021 when the business was about 100 or so people. They've now got to 600 staff, and they published $44 million in net fee income in their third full year, which is bonkers. They are the fastest growing recruitment company on the planet, one of the fastest growing companies on the planet. James, in this episode, it was in lockdown in early 2021, James talked about the story, talked about the mad ideas, and pretty much everything he said was going to happen has come true. Now, I am going to interview James and the team again this year to talk about it in real time, but I thought, while I've got a gap, and I know you guys enjoy listening to this show each week, why not bring back the episode and replay an episode that went down so well? So let's go back to a couple of years ago and listen to James Brown's story and why he built the Levin Group with the vision to be the fastest growing recruitment company on the planet. Hope you enjoy it. I'm super excited to be joined by someone I've known for a couple of years now. James Brown is the founder and CEO, I think. He's changed his title a couple of times on LinkedIn recently, of the Levin Group, which is a founding group of a number of recruitment brands such as Storm 2 and soon to be Storm 3 and Storm 4. I'm more excited about this than I have been for a while because as James is officially the fastest growing recruitment brand in the world right now. It's incredible what he's achieved in the last 18 months since starting the business. So let's just get into it. James, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Just to caveat the job title thing, I've kept titles off of it to avoid accountability as much as possible. When it goes well, I'll put my name to it.
Can you not put technical lead on there? Because you are the biggest disaster with technology getting onto the show I've ever had.
I only found out the other day that I didn't have an iPhone. But yeah, I'm not the most tech-enabled person in the world. But yeah, if the business goes well, then I'll call myself something on LinkedIn. If it doesn't, I'll just quietly slide off social media and disappear.
Well, don't call yourself CTO because that's just lying. That's all I'm saying. We already had a few comments. The likes of James Visor has just tuned in. Afternoon, excited for this one. James, good to have you on. And I'm super excited. So, James, before we get into the show, I've done a little intro there, but I can never ever do it justice. So, for the listeners' benefit, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I guess I'll keep it sort of relevant to the audience. So my story is I joined Faden International, which at the time was called Selby Jennings, in 2008 as a graduate out of university. And sort of first job out of university, just like everyone else, and didn't really have an idea what I'd signed up to until I got onto the sales floor and started getting told to dial the phone a couple of hundred times a day until, as long as you didn't see daylight, you were working hard enough. And then worked through a couple of promotions and went to Singapore after 3 years to launch the Asia Pac business for Faden. And then came back in 2016 to sort of take Europe in under my wing as well as Group MD. So that was sort of, I guess, where it's the beginning of the end started. I was sort of, 30 years old, leading circa 300 people across 5 countries, and sitting on the exec board. And then I exited Faden in 2018 following the acquisition by Quilvest Private Equity, which was largely, to fulfill an ambition of launching my own sort of global recruitment business, but specifically specializing in disruptive tech sectors, if that helps.
Yeah, it does. So you've got that. We'll go into the background. We're going to go right back to it.
Okay. Oh, God.
You effectively exited Faden 2018. You launched Storm 2 in, when was it? The summer of 2019, was it?
Yeah, I mean, I registered the company a few months earlier, and then I basically spent 6 months sort of going back and forth in my mind as to what the whole company was going to be about. Or procrastinating, I think is the word for that.
Yeah, we had a few meetings at that point, if you remember.
I had loads of meetings that went I was just trying to fill my diary and get out of the house, because I think I was trying to. I mean that was whatever anyone says. Like, starting a business is a dark and lonely place. There was some days when I just stare at a wall and didn't really, I couldn't work out where this was all going. But when I finally got my act together, after being introduced to Puffin Point, who were the backers behind the Spencer Ogden story, we launched the business in anger in July, with a couple of guys called Jamie Robinson and George Truella. I'll alternate whose name I say first throughout the call, just so I don't get into it. Don't insinuate that either of them were the first person in. But yeah, and the three of us then got in the back of a coffee shop and put our heads together and sort of started to try and work out what we were going to look like and what the philosophy of the business was going to be. And then,
James, sorry to interject, but we'll go through all this. Right, just where are you right now? Just give an over snapshot of the business today.
I mean, it seems to change weekly at the moment. So where are we today? So we've been going 18 months, up there or thereabouts. We've got 50 odd people in Storm 2, which is the first brand, and then some people that have joined the board and support areas around the business, and more people that are coming into the business next week. So I guess snapshot of the first 18 months would be 60 people, London and Singapore. We're just going through the process of registering the Amsterdam entity and starting the New York license process.
Right. So in 18 months, you've reached around 60 staff, and you've not come up for air, I don't think. I mean, I've seen you on numerous occasions, and it's always a million miles an hour. So I'm just excited there's kind of 3 parts to this conversation, right? There's what did you do before Storm 2? I want to go into that first. And then I'm really excited to find out about the last 18 months and get a bit more detail. And anyone listening live on LinkedIn who's got any questions, please do add them and I'll get round to them. And then what the hell are you looking to do in the future? Because there's some unbelievable growth plans. So let's go back. So you mentioned you joined as a graduate at Faden.
Yeah.
And you were there for how long?
10.5 years officially.
How big? What was just to set the scene of what you walked into on day one? What did the business look like?
A basement. I walked into I turned up at this. I mean, basically, Adam, the founder, had sort of done a number on me with the business address. I turned up to 1 Carlton Gardens, Mayfair, and then when I walked through the door for my first round interview, I walked down 5 flights of stairs into a basement with no lights. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and what a story that turned out to be. So yeah, I sort of got into the basement. I was interviewed by 2 or 3 people that are still in the business today, who rejected me. I think one of the MDs that's at Faden now said that who sort of ended up working for a long time, said that I wouldn't cut it because I was just a sailor bum. And then got rejected from 7, 8 other recruitment companies at interview stage. No one wanted to hire me. Everyone thought I was too not necessarily placid, but just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, which is absolutely true. And then eventually I got a call back from another manager at Faden, a guy called Steve Yendall, who basically took a chance on me because we both supported Liverpool, from what I understand. And then I started a few months later.
It's a shame that you both spotted Liverpool. We'll talk about that another time. That's just a side problem that you've got to deal with.
Yes, yeah.
You know, it's like I referred to COVID-19 and Liverpool being quite similar last week, which is quite a bad thing to say. So I won't go into that this week.
It's probably fair.
Yeah. So you joined this business. How many people were in the basement?
Probably 15, 20 or so at the time. But I mean, I started on the same day as 8 or 9 other people. I think I was the only one left after 2 weeks. So it was a hardcore environment. But obviously, Faden, that period of time gave birth to a raft of people who went on to do really well in the business. So I think that everyone was working in a way that probably created the standards and philosophy that would be sustainable through what was to come in 2008 and 2009.
Yeah, because you hear Faden and S3 in a similar light, don't you? Like they're almost like the people that have left S3 have gone and created loads of businesses, and then Faden feels like that now. You're popping out, and there's other leaders coming out of the business, and there's clearly a methodology there that has been very, very successful that you guys are looking to use time and time again. So what was the size of the business when you left? You went from, say, 15, 20 to what?
Just over 500, I think.
Right.
It was literally just over 500 people the day that I walked out, but growing at the time. It was heading towards 600 people.
What would you say? Just first open question, like what is that secret sauce? Like what's that? Because so many brands have not done that in the time that they have. What do you think is behind the growth that Faden went through?
Well, some of us lost our hair on the journey, and others lost themselves along the way. It was, I think brutal hard work. I think was, we all. I think Adam, the guy who founded it, I think he set the culture in terms of everyone was so bought into the mission that if you cut anyone, they would bleed Faden. And I think that it's surprising what people will do when they really buy into the mission, as opposed to just feel like they're getting compensated to play a role. And I think that that almost, it wasn't a cult culture, but that siege mentality of us against the world, and we're doing something that no one else is doing, I think brought everyone together to achieve things way above and beyond what they thought they were capable of. And I think that the other part of it was just, I think if you asked anyone in Faden from that time, when the business was really flying through those growth hurdles, I think that they would all say that we just set higher standards. I remember booking 26 interviews in a week in my third, fourth month in recruitment, and I still remember my boss saying, "How you getting to 30?" Like that was just like there's just that constant culture of like, what's next? And I think that hard work and high standards, and then obviously a really smart strategy being set from the top.
But to still, I mean, again, high standards, hard work. I don't think there's many recruitment companies that would say they don't have that still haven't got anywhere near it. Is there like a different level of investment in growth, do you think, than in an average business? As in like the percentage of revenue that is invested back in, or is there something that's different that you
potentially
guys?
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge question, and I've obviously got to be careful not to speak on behalf of Faden now. It's a bit like I imagine it's a bit like speaking about a past relationship, right? It's not whereas I'm in a new one with Levin Group, but I, from the business as it was then, and I can speak about that because I was there. I think that I guess the things that were unique to the business were a very, very smart sort of group and brand structure, lots of incredible cross-selling initiatives where everyone was sort of helping each other along in terms of opening up clients. And I would say an extremely powerful, something I've only ever seen be done as well as Faden was at S3 in terms of the organic model of bringing graduates through and giving them huge opportunities before they're ready for them. That was something, if there's a unique part about Faden, I don't think there was another business that I've ever heard of that would have taken a punt on a 24-year-old like me to send them halfway across the world to Singapore to launch an Asia Pacific business with a lot of money being outlaid on that as an experiment. And I think that opportunity culture of handing out ridiculous opportunities to people when they were very young, just on merit rather than age, I think is something that really set the tone for the future growth of the business.
Yeah, that I think that is it. I think that's the secret that I was looking for. Okay, so what was the story behind you making the call that it was time to go? Tell us let's go right to that point.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd had an incredible journey at Fade, and I think that period of time afforded some incredible experiences. I'd traveled the world, had a lot of fun, learned a lot, and made some good money out of the journey. Just speaking very frankly, and I think that after the PE acquisition, I took stock of what I wanted from the next 10 years of my life. And I didn't really see it in a corporate environment, following others, and I guess sort of standing on the shoulders of the previous success. I think that I felt like I'd learned what I wanted to learn from that journey. Obviously there was more to learn, tons more to learn, but I felt like I'd learned what I wanted to learn, which was how to take a business from nothing to 500 people all around the world, and had a blueprint and a model in my mind. And obviously there were huge downsides to leaving, massive downsides to leaving. I left a lot of equity and money on the table, which was tough and gut wrenching, as well as swapping a pretty comfy exec board role for sitting in my bedroom in my pants, adding managers to Bullhorn without a salary, which is sort of quite a brutal awakening. But what it all came down to was I just decided I was never going to be able to look myself in the mirror if I didn't back myself to do it and make the leap to go all the way back to the beginning again and do it from the ground up, but try and do it better. That was what it came down to. And I thought I could have all the money in the world, but if I can't look at myself in the mirror, and I barely can as it is, what's it worth?
Okay. So, all right. So then you exit, and you're back in that early 2019 phase where we met, I think March, April. You came and saw me. We had a good chat. I remember thinking, I didn't know if you were crazy or what. I was like, this guy's got some vision that was exciting. You speak at 100 miles an hour anyway, so keeping up with you was hard work even then. What was the vision that you had in that early stage of 2019? Like, talk us through.
I think that it evolved over time. I think that the vision was always to take the bits that I liked from my previous business and do things where I felt they could be done better, in markets where I felt they could be done better, and perhaps with more synergy and maybe with a culture that was more reflective of sort of the modern world that we work in. And I think that my vision at that moment in time was, okay, let's get into some really hot sectors. Let's work towards a globally distributed multi-sector model, because that's good for both a risk managed business but also a scalable one. And let's just build something initially where everyone's working incredibly hard, making a lot of money, and having a lot of fun. That was the initial vision, because ultimately, that's what will get you to that next stage of really thinking about where it could go, and not getting too fixated on, 1,000-person business or blah, 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 blah. Like, initially, it's just getting everyone to get over their first deal. So I think the vision was, let's just create a really, really good business and enjoy it. And then, I think we knew roughly where we were going with it. And that sort of has evolved over the last 18 months. Well, no, over the last 12 months, really. Right. Especially since the pandemic sort of took hold.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So let's go to, why did you get investment? Like, let's talk us through that mindset, because you didn't do it like most people, where they sit, they try and build, they hire their first person. You got institutional investment before you even started, right?
Yeah. So I guess that my skill set, I guess what I'd left Faden with was a blueprint, and I knew how to run, huge distributed teams of like I said, 200-300 people across different countries. And so going back into my bedroom and getting on the phones doing deals probably wasn't the best use of that knowledge, and I wouldn't be capitalizing on it. So I got, obviously after leaving Faden and spending some time out, and was getting approached by a lot of different investors, because, they some of them were as blunt as, could you just build us what you did at Faden again? And then, that nothing much more. Others wanted, sort of too much control, and others didn't necessarily share the vision. But I wasn't necessarily, really set on the idea of taking investment. But I was introduced to Puffin Point and Edward Ogden, who were the lead investors in the Spencer Ogden journey. And I think there was just an immediate synergy between us all. They were incredibly ambitious. They had proof of concept in the way that they backed Spencer Ogden all the way through to PE exit through a 10-year journey. They understood recruitment, but they also understood, sort of what kind of relationship would be needed between us, and between, being two hands on or two hands off. And they understood that they understood very much that I needed to kind of, own this, because I had so many reasons why I didn't want it to fail outside of, not letting investors down, that were personal to me. And yeah, I think that once after I came away from those initial meetings, I don't think I looked back. What annoyed me, actually, sorry, you've set off something in my mind now. What really annoyed me was I kept reading all these books about like just Silicon Valley style companies where investors seem to chuck money at academically gifted people with good ideas, but no clue. Almost swore then. I don't know what the rules are about that, but no clue.
Do what you want.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope. So let's just keep. I'll put that mental. I'll put the trading wheels back on my mind. So you got all these smart people getting like loads of money chucked at them from investors just because they had a good idea and a PhD from Stanford to build huge teams when none of these people have ever built teams before. They don't know how to hire and manage teams and scale at 2,000%. And I kept thinking, this is madness. Like every book I read, I just like churning through all these Silicon Valley books. And I was thinking, well, if I know how to scale a business, I know how to operate one at scale, there's huge market demand. I think we can attract the talent, and nothing that we're going to do in this plan is going to be something we haven't done before. Why can't a recruitment company be scaled like a tech company? Like, why is that not a thing? Like, why can no one? Why has that never been challenged before? That was really the philosophy behind this. That we've got a plan. Why wait for the recruitment businesses traditionally grow a bit, scale at 20-30% year on year, grow a bit more, keep scaling, grow a bit more, keep on scaling. They do it over a sort of 10 to 20 year period. But tech companies seem to blow up out of nowhere into 250 person businesses overnight just because someone's got a smart idea. So I think that, somewhere between the middle there was a conversation around, look, why wait? Why should we wait until we've, built up our cash reserves? We know this is going to work. So let's just go for it. And yeah, if it works, then I'll take credit for it. If not, it was probably, George and Jamie and Alex that is their ideas.
So you what was life like at the beginning then? You've secured the funding, so you got a big amount in the bank, I imagine, right? What did you do first with it?
Went Lamborghini shopping.
Yeah,
obviously, yeah. No,
so you can turn up on day one looking good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can't afford the office, but this car is fantastic for lunch clubs. No, we honestly, the very first thing we did, I'd gone through the fundraise, right, and I'd gone through those conversations, and was feeling really bullish about it. But as I said, Jamie and George were two people that I spoke about with the business initially, and they were the ones that had the plan. I think I was like, look, I've got this direction and this idea, and we sat in the back of the coffee shop, and George is incredibly talented at what he did, and he said, look, this should be our client approach. This is how we should start. And Jamie, is outstanding at developing teams and the people side of it and hiring and training. And he came up with a plan to kind of put all that into place. So I don't actually remember kind of nailing it all down myself. I just remember the three of us sitting around in a room going back and forth on whiteboards with coffees from Pret, just like working it out. That was the first thing we did. We just sat in a coffee shop and tried to figure out how the hell we were going to do it. Now we've done it, how we're going to got the money, how we're going to do it. And that was it. Those were exciting times, gritty times. Monday nights on Brick Lane can be a bit ropey, but fun time.
You went and got that office in, was it Flora or something over in?
Flora, yeah. So I'd always worked predominantly with Knight Frank in the past, and they've always been really good at finding us, awesome office space and immediately came up with this, But I had a number done on me basically, but in terms of like, I think everyone can see what I want initially, which is like, I wanted brick. I wanted exposed brickwork. I wanted to feel like a tech company. I wanted a really good location and a really tech-enabled building. So I thought, if we're going to grow like a tech company, let's try and sit in a tech hub. And all of the companies in our building were sort of tech-focused companies. And got the office. Office was awesome. And then we outgrew it.
I remember meeting you when you first started, and it was just like you plus the two guys. And got Jamie and George going, oh yeah, we're interviewing loads of people. Like, we're hiring 20 people or something. What was the exact? You had like a start date, and you had like 20 hires or something.
I think it was August that basically we phoned up. I think August the 1st or something like that. We just said, right, we need to hire 20 people. We got 3 weeks to do it. Go. And then we just I think we basically with three of us. It was like a weird speed dating situation. We sort of sat in different parts of the building, and grads were just like walking around the building, bumping into. It was almost like a haunted house of horrors. You know what I mean? Like people would walk up a bit and bump into someone else. I've got some questions for you. And then I think we did, if my memory serves me correctly, we did 167 first round interviews in 10 working days between the three of us. And then ended up hiring sort of an initial group of people, and many of those people are still with us today and are taking leading roles in taking the business to the next part of the story.
So how many did you take on? Can you remember?
18.
Yeah,
I want to say
18.
18. Yeah. Someone might have backed out the day before and saved themselves a lot of bother.
So you bring in 18 grads who don't know anything about recruitment. You got you three. You're not really getting on the phone at this point, or that's not your plan, is it? So what was the next 6? I remember your Christmas party video, and you showed me a few things. So you had like a 4 or 5 month window up to Christmas. Did you have moments where you were like, "What am I doing?" Like
that was just one long moment most of the time. It was. Yeah, it's madness. I felt, the grads were looking at us and going, "What's the plan here?" And sometimes I'd go, "I don't know. I'm not actually sure here. Like, I'm not. I think we've sort of got a plan." Or they'd ask me questions about bullhorn, and I'd just sort of, I'd try to turn it into like a coachable moment. I'd say, "Well, maybe you could work. Yeah, what do you think? How do you what do you think would happen if you click that other button?" And then they'd click it, and I'd go, "There you go. Yeah, that's the big money right there." Those skills.
So how did performance go? Because you had all these grads. What were the billings like in the first 6 months?
So the billing, pretty good actually. We were. I was surprised. It was. We had. I think we had deals going up in sort of back end of the second, early of the third month. And we were achieving our budgets. I mean, and actually, largely, going into April, we were sort of tracking really well ahead of budget, and we were doing better than we thought we would. And obviously, the first 6 months we had, we launched on that day, and then we had Christmas, Brexit, and COVID all in the first 6 months, and we had no candidates, no clients, and 20 grads, and I didn't know how to use the systems. So it was like nothing was really set up.
It's just incredible, isn't it?
Nothing was really set up for success.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't even talk about the market, right? So why did you choose fintech for Storm 2?
I think that a lot of businesses want to do fintech, right? But a lot of the businesses that are positioned to do fintech are large scale corporates that have been around for 15, 20, 30 years. And it's just too hard for them to pivot and get into it. Do you know what I mean? In the same way that Goldman Sachs and HSBC and banks like that probably want to get into, fintech, you can't change a long history of incumbent methodology and people and systems and processes it's like turning an oil tanker. You can't just suddenly get into something. And I think that was, I recognize that I think, Faden's obviously a great business, but it's set up in long-term markets that have been around for a very, very long time, and they're deeply entrenched in them. And it's sort of, as a business, as any business, not just Faden, but any business gets bigger above a certain size, it becomes hard to react to market opportunities. And I think that fintech was exploding. There was tons of investment going into it, and CEOs didn't seem to have any clear idea about where they're going to find their people. I was going to fintech conferences, and I hate conferences. Like I hate talking to people, which is ironic actually. But I go to these conferences and ask CEOs, like, which recruiters do you use for your recruitment? And every single CEO I spoke to listed 10 different companies I've never heard of. Like, no one knew where to go. There was no recognized solution. So I thought, it sort of became clear over time, like we can be that solution. And also the other reason I chose fintech was, it's global, so we could scale a global business in it. It's highly specialized, which means the salaries are high, and they predominantly use perm people. And I come from a perm background, and perm is the model I wanted to follow. So, I think a globally distributed, highly specialized, well-paid and compensated model that commands good fee rates and something that is heavily invested in, that's a good market, and also specifically underbroked, and underserviced by the wider recruitment community meant there was a bit of a gap there. And I'm not saying I was the first person to have the idea, but I think, I thought if we go big on this, we could really, make a dent quickly.
I'm interrupting today's episode to bring you a message from our sponsor, Vincere. Vincere are the all-in-one recruitment platform for the most innovative recruitment agencies on the planet. And they've put together a free CRM buyer's guide for you to read, because so many recruitment leaders are looking to upgrade CRMs, but before you sign the contract, be sure to read the terms at least twice. There's so many common traps that you need to watch out for. So not understanding the pricing model is one that always comes up. Discounts limited to only the first year of a contract length is something that companies will throw. What are monthly contracts all about? Could this mean flexibility for the vendor to raise the price in the future? And how is your data hosted? Where is it? Is it anything outside your country? And could it mean compliance and legal issues for you down the line? So you will see the web address to get that right next to this episode. wherever you're watching this episode, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's Apple, Spotify, YouTube, just look below. You'll see the link, click the link and get that free guide. You will not regret learning all of these hacks before making your decision and locking yourself into a new contract with a new supplier. That takes us nicely in. We know why you chose the market. You got your 20 grads. You're tracking nicely. You hit Christmas. And then talk us through what life was like for you when COVID started to unfold in March time.
I mean, without stating the obvious, it was mental. Like it was. I remember I saw. Well, one day I just got on the phone to our IT supplier. I just said, I think we need 20 laptops, and they went, why? I said, because I think the world's ending. I think we need to do something about this. And we literally they arrived the day that we decided to send everyone home, and it all looked like we'd carefully planned it, but it was chaos. Like Jamie, we were on the phone going, what are we going to do? This is an absolute nightmare. But to be honest, I think that I had a huge advantage in that situation, and obviously, like, everything I'll say about this subject is caveated with obviously the huge and horrendous downsides to COVID, right? So it's not like I'm celebrating what's happened. It's just the fact that it's created opportunity for us on a commercial level, right? Yeah. So I started in recruitment 2 weeks before Lehman Brothers crashed. So I guess you could say I cut my teeth in chaos, right? And last year, although it was initially incredibly gloomy for the industry, it felt quite familiar to me. My initial reaction was, actually, this feels like it did when I first started. I feel almost comfortable in the muck. Do you know what I mean? Comfortable in a bad situation. So I was quite calm about it. Now, obviously, there were some massively nervy moments. Like there's an amazing line on our systems, which is like our interviews and sales pipeline. It's like, you couldn't even ski down it. Like, it was so bad. And and obviously we'd only been trading a few months. We had a big business that was due to catch up with NFI. We hadn't really built up our cash reserves yet. All our sales and interviews dropped off a cliff. Everyone was panicking. No one knew what to say. But I think that, ultimately, I believed in the market. I thought the market is good, right? Everything's going to go digital, obviously, and if digital is still going to go the way it's going to go, irrespective of pandemics or no pandemics. So maybe I wasn't as clear on that as I was at the time, but I believed it. Do you know what I mean? I believed it. Whether I knew it or not is probably up for debate. And then we looked at the team that we had, and I think I just had a decision to make. I was like, well, what do we do here? Do we capitalize on market share? Now, obviously, Adam with Faden in 2008, 2009, he used that as an opportunity to double down and take market share whilst competition was weak, and actually you could make a huge leap forward in terms of your piece of the market. And looking around the room, I thought, actually, we should back our people here. Like, if we back our people, we might be able to trade our way through this. Let's not make any rash decisions. So, we made that decision. We stuck by our team. We didn't furlough anyone or make any redundancies or make any cuts or anything like that. We just upped all the targets and worked harder than ever. And our sales levels grew through COVID. We actually made more money quarter on quarter through 2020. And that, that gave us a massive leap on the market in terms of our position in the space. But also it initiated a conversation with the investors who were really keen to back the plan with more commitment, because they said, look, if it's going this well now, imagine how well it's going to go on the other side. So, and they've always shared our vision and values on that. So I think that, I used this analogy the other day, and whoever ended up listening to me is going to go mad that I'm using it again on this. But I was reading about whitewater rafting. Stick with me, right? You won't regret it. You might. I might be. The preamble is wasting more of people's time than the actual analogy. So, is that in competitive whitewater rafting, they did some analysis on where the athletes' eyes were looking, and this has always stuck with me for years. Like, and the competitors that focused their eyes and their focus and attention on the rocks and the pitfalls and the dangerous water, in order to avoid them, ended up in trouble more than the competitors that focused all their attention on the safe patches and blocked out the danger. And they tended to stay in a better place by focusing on the good stuff, right? And I think that my belief has always been that, if you try and avoid failure, you will most likely always find failure. Whereas if you obsess over success, and you will find, then you'll find it, right? It's a bit like, I always say it to consultants: don't try and not blank, try and bill. If you try to not blank, you will blank. Or at least you'll bill less than you could. If you obsess over doing 50K, you'll probably, worst case scenario, you'll do, 30 or 40 or 25. So Yeah,
So
I should mention, by the way, sorry, I should mention the people that did all the work were George and Jamie through that period. Like they deserve the lion's share for building the company and putting in the hard yards. And Alex Horner did some amazing stuff coming in towards the tail end. But I think but there were some tough decisions to be made.
Yeah. So, by the way, Alex Gilbert has just said that's a great example. So he enjoyed that. And I get it. I get more. So everyone else, and I think probably me included, have a period of time where you're going, fuck, like this could happen, that could happen. If I was a lot of people in your seat would be like, I've got all this money, I've got all this pressure, I've got all these grads, I've got fucking brand new laptops, I don't understand the systems. I've not even worked I've got a year or 6 months out before. Like, fucking hell, like you could have sat there and gone, what are the chances? What our luck? Fucking our luck. First year of business, I've got all this money and all this growth, and then it's falling apart. But you didn't. You just went pivot, move, keep pushing. And then you mentioned yesterday when we had a pre-chat that, back in August, you then decided to grow again. You started to hire again. So once that eat out to help out period of time and everyone started to get a bit more flexible, did you guys go back to the office? Like, how did you manage that? And what was the decision to then start hiring again?
So we made the decision to start hiring in July. And we hired another 20 something graduates into the program and sort of doubled the size of the business at the time. To execute, because there's no point having a good idea and backing a strategy if you don't put the people in place to execute it. And we ended up, luckily, actually, we had 2 or 3 weeks where everyone was in the office using all the social distancing measures, and we've got all the screens and the one-way signs and all that stuff. And then we went back into I think then we made the decision that actually it probably wasn't, it was heading the wrong way. And I think we've roughly called it each time as to what the right level of in office versus out of office should be. But then we went into like a half in, half out type rota system. So we got pretty big office and then just had half the people in on an A/B rota, week on, week off, which was, actually a really fascinating learning journey of how to, get the most out of people in that time.
Having all grads from home, you hear a lot of stories, graduates working on kitchen tables and ironing boards, and, the typical grad in London lives with their friends. They haven't got offices. They haven't got like you and I might have some space. What was that like for your team?
I think that in terms of their personal journeys, I think it was very mixed across the board, because some of them went home to family homes and worked through that period. Others, I think, were quite confident it was only going to be a short-term thing and worked in their apartments and accommodation in London. And I think that what we found is that basically half in, half out, week on, week off is pretty bearable for most people. If in fact it's actually a really good balance, because most people, I tend to be sick of the people that I used to work with when I was a consultant, sat either side of me all day long. And if I could have a week off every now and then, that'd be good. Big shout out to Trevor Simons and Greg Pesant there. I think that the message was definitely, to everyone, look, we just got to kind of get through this. But my message to everyone was that, like, if this will come back, the market will come back. It's kind of up to you, like, how much you want to let it affect you. Like, people have been through worse than this. Like, there are people with actual problems, not just a lack of desk space in the pandemic. Do you know what I mean? Like, actual problems. And so, it's all just a mindset of, okay, well, I could complain about not having a great chair, or I could just get on with it and, and then plan to succeed when things come good again. And I think that, I've got to say, like, the people in our business that joined in that August Academy were insanely impressive. And I believe that, if you hire really good, smart people, you shouldn't think just because they're out of your sight working at home, they've suddenly become maniacs and watch The Crown all day. It just doesn't work like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they're in the business and they want to succeed, they'll want to succeed outside the office. I think the challenge was giving them enough guidance and support, without obviously slipping into full-on Zoom quiz mode and making everyone vomit in their mouths.
How did you do that?
No Zoom quizzes. We absolutely no. You've got knock that on the head straight away. It's like, we're not doing that. We're not going back into that. That was everyone's biggest fear. Is are we going back into Zoom quizzes like summer again? It's like, no, we're not doing that ever again. Like, the world could end. We're not doing a Zoom quiz. Yeah. To be fair, the 1 or 2 times we did it, it was awesome. So how did we do it? I think that the key the key initially was, you know, everyone pulling together around the mission. And I think that giving a lot of structure in terms of engagement time. So what I mean by that is that one of the most stressful things of working at home, we found, and I believe, is getting calls and Zoom invitations from your bosses and colleagues when you're not expecting them. And you know, if you're in the middle of working a job, you found 2 CVs out of the 3 shortlist that you're looking for, and then you get a call from your boss going, "How's the day going?" And you're like, "Just fuck off. Like, just let me get on with my job." Like, I've got no doubt that if I called someone in the middle of them working the job, just let me get this shortlist done. And it's stressful, and then they've got to go back and, you know, like start it all over again. And, you know, so I think that the best thing we can offer, I think, you know, we could offer our people is consistency and say, look, we're still going to do our Monday kickoff. We're still going to do our Friday roundup. We're still going to do our team whip meetings in these times. And we're not going to deviate from that. We're not going to try and roll the dice on our culture. We're just going to try and keep as much structure as possible. And then as a philosophy, avoid impromptu engagement, because then, you know, all day Wednesday, you're not going to get contacted by your manager or your boss with their greatest idea. You know, and I've got a lot of shit ones, a lot of bad ideas. And if I phoned everyone constantly with, "What about this? We could try this. We could try this." It got to the point where people were actively saying to me, "You just got to shut up and let us go on with our jobs." And I think that, you know, just, and again, that's the reason we do the week on, week off thing. You know, like, you've got to give people certainty. Am I in the office this week or am I not? What's my working routine going to be for the next few days? Not kind of constant change, and the managers don't know who's in and who's out, and you know, people don't know whether they're getting up every day and exercising, or if they're getting up every day and getting on the tube. Like, you've got to give consistency.
Yeah. All right. So let's go into, so you talked about, you know, the investors wanting to back you even further. And then towards the back end of last year, you got, you know, through the first wave, through the summer, we're going back into lockdowns. And now you've got some ridiculously exciting plans that are moving forward. So one of the biggest piece of news is you bring in Adam Buck from Faden out of retirement as the chairman. Tell us what's that all about? What's happened there?
Well, I mean, obviously Adam did well as out of Faden, so I had to go and find him in his garden first in Wimbledon, which is sort of like, you know, like it's a long old time to track him down. So yeah, look, I mean, you know, Adam, I guess, you know, he was the guy that created Faden, built it, scaled it, sold it, and, you know, I think that it would be madness, right, not to, if we're trying to create an organic group and brand model, and he's someone that I worked with for a long time, to not approach him about being a part of it and seeing if he was interested in, you know, doing, you know, just getting back involved, because obviously I didn't know where his headspace was at. I can't speak for him, by the way. You know, obviously, you know, he's got his own things to say, and so I won't, you know, I won't try and say what he thought. But I think, you know, I caught up with him in the summer a few months ago, and I just said, look, I think there's an opportunity to do something really special here, like really, really special. There seems to be a moment in time when, you know, our markets are flying. All of our end sectors are flying. They're flying through the pandemic. They're going to fly outside the back of the pandemic. Our model is working. Our business processes and our business financial model is all proving extremely robust. Our investors are backing us hard on this. Like, there is an opportunity, you know, while the competition is weakened, to do something incredible. And you know, I think that, again, you know, without putting words in his mouth, I think he recognised that he founded a Faden after leaving S3 to want to do it bigger, better, faster, and make it more lucrative for people, you know, in his business than S3 made it in theirs. And I think that I was essentially following the same path, and he recognised that. You know, I wanted to take the things I liked about the Faden journey, but apply things that were different. You know, go bigger, go quicker. You know, create a super generous share incentive scheme, an equity scheme that would really reward everyone throughout the business at the top, but also through to some of the more junior levels, because obviously, you know, we had the opportunities to do that from the outset. And I think he bought into that idea, that concept of doing it bigger and better and faster. And he's also made some incredible introductions, not least in he's introduced Victoria Maloney to our board, who was on the board of S3, and she's been like an absolute godsend in terms of helping us go through this next stage of journey and being someone that I can lean on in terms of sort of advice.
So was that your thought process then, was just building the A team around you above to give you that like protection of mental headspace to be able to lean on people all the time? Instead of ringing all your teams, you can ring them.
So I believe that I should never, ever be the smartest person in the room. And that's not hard, to be honest, you know, because I think that, the second that you feel like there's not better ideas and better people than you in the room, I think you're in the wrong room. And, I think that that's not just Adam and Vix and what they've brought to the table. It's also the VP. So, George relentlessly points out my shortcomings as a leader. Jamie, even more so, relentlessly points out what I'm bad at and has better ideas. Alex is better with clients than I've ever been. And we've got more people that have come into the business, like Candy Chung in Singapore, who's an incredible leader and understands the APAC market. Aaron Chan's come in from Faden actually, and is I don't understand how people achieve the levels that they did. I've never achieved those levels when it comes to doing recruitment. And I think that that was really the philosophy of building a team of people. And we've got more people coming into the business in the next couple of weeks as we go through the process of launching new brands. I don't know, but I probably can mention it. So we've got Claire Cooper's joining. She's also from Faden. She's coming in to launch a global health tech recruitment brand, sort of Storm 2, but in the health tech sector. Storm 3, exactly. Yeah, I'm not known for my creativity, but it makes sense to me. It's just easier. But and I think that when you've got companies like Apple and Facebook and whatever, like, I don't think the name matters. So it's just how good the company is. But she's an inspirational individual and someone that I've got massive faith and belief in, because I've known her for a really long time, and I'm incredibly excited to work with her again. And we're also launching Storm 4, which is a green tech recruitment brand to focus on sustainability and energy technology under Kaylee Bottomley, who we've gotten to know more recently from Gravitas. She's been hugely impressive through the process, and we're also launching a group hub for all the brands out of Amsterdam in the next 4 to 6 weeks under Angela Ward, who was instrumental in scaling S3's Benelux business and their long-term success in that region. So I think if you get all those people in a room, and Adam and Vix, like, I get lost in the boardroom sometimes. Like, there's so much talent and so many views and so much advice around the room that I think that was really the purpose. That was, putting that team together, outstanding people, all of whom are mission driven, all of whom have got experience of building and scaling stuff, and everyone's got a point to prove and wants to achieve something. Then, and as long as you incentivize people, and I think we pay people incredibly well. I think, we're setting new benchmarks for that and creating that equity structure. It creates quite an exciting environment where realistically, I could almost kind of get out of people's way rather than trying to control from the front, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. So you talked to me yesterday and you mentioned some ridiculous numbers, right? You said you're trying to hire 130 people in the next 90 days.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. Other people are going to. Yeah.
Yeah, but the business, the group of brands.
Yeah.
What? Why? How? When? Where? Well, tell us more.
So obviously, with it sounds like a mad number, but when you break it out across, Storm 2, Storm 3, Storm 4, Singapore, London, Amsterdam, and then New York and the West Coast of America are also on our radar for the next six to 9 months. When you break it out across that many leaders and that many locations and brands, it's actually not that much. Like, right. It's a huge number. It's a huge thing to say. We're going from 60 people today to 200 people by the end of April, and we will do that number. Like, that is where we will get to. And we've got huge internal recruitment efforts happening behind the scenes. I don't think it's actually a really good time to get hold of people, right? People are available to interview. People are sitting at home. There's lots of good talent out there. There's really smart people.
Lots of grads with no opportunity or lack of opportunity.
Yeah, or just in opportunities that they don't necessarily believe in as much, and they want to jump on a faster moving train. So I think that there's good talent out there, and we're in a position to capitalize on it, thanks to the work that's been done so far in the business and the investors' belief and the team that have come on board. So yeah, we're just in a good situation to be able to capitalize on this, as I said earlier, this moment in time.
And the vision you mentioned for the 2-year anniversary, where do you want to be in August?
It's not a vision, because I sort of have to do it now, because a lot of these people have joined, they've left their companies, they've left their business, they've walked away from stuff to come and join this plan. So if I don't deliver on it, I'll have a lynch mob after me. So I think, and that's what really keeps me up at night, is like letting everyone down. So I think that, I would hang my hat out on the record and say that by end of April, early May, we'll, by our sort of, 20 to 21st month anniversary, will be over 200 people. And by August, we'll be knocking on the door of 300 people by their second anniversary from inception. which is, again, you know, it seems scary, but we're just taking it a week at a time.
What's your like time from hire to like making money for a graduate coming in? Because that's a lot of people that will be costing you money for that period of time. Yes,
lots of people costing us lots of money. It is scary, but it's just economies of scale. So the average time tends to be somewhere around the 12 to 14 week mark on average, which I think is relatively industry standard. I don't think we're set in the world alight for time to build. I think that where our people really kick on is they then make make deals quite quickly after that and get promoted quite quickly. Which, again, because we're at that sort of young scaling stage, we're able to promote people really quickly, give opportunity and progression really quickly, and also we've not got huge, you know, historical overheads and 30,000-40,000 square foot leases that we have to pay for, so we can actually pay really, really well. Do you know what I mean? Because we freed the money up. We haven't got all this like fixed cost underneath.
What is your office strategy in terms of how are you going to do that now?
So I think that it's a tough question. I don't really know. There are routes we could take. I think that ultimately most of enjoying being in recruitment is your colleagues, right? It's the team, it's the buzz, it's the interaction, it's the competition. Like, that's what people live for. I think. So I think in some capacity we will need to have an office. You know, our office at the moment in London only houses 50 odd people. We'll need one at least 3 times that size in a few months' time. And as I said, we've got a really good partner in Knight Frank who help us go on that journey. We're in a brilliant building who are very flexible. You know, we're in Story at British Land in Liverpool Street, and yeah, like when you've got partners like that who are willing to go on the journey with you and help you scale and be flexible and offer you solutions, you don't need to make decisions. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think we're in a good situation to be flexible and react maybe a month or 2 out, rather than sitting there thinking, how are we going to get out of this long-term lease? Yeah, at the moment, I don't know. I think I will know more in 2 months' time, hopefully, with everyone else. But the plan is definitely to keep quite a lot of office interaction, even if we might go back to every other week. Do you know what I mean? That seems to be quite a nice balance. But we'll take a temperature test on it. You know, see what people want to do. That's it.
What does the leadership team structure look like under you at 200 people? What have you got in your mind?
I mean, what does it look like? So again, I think that it's a very flat structure. It's an incredibly flat structure that we've got. You know, we're very careful not to create like a hierarchical corporate system where you've got like a million titles, which is why everyone's a VP. You know, everyone that's in a leadership role is a VP. You know, there is no kind of if you've got a room where you've got, you know, a couple of associate directors, a couple of directors, a couple of executive directors, a couple of managing directors, etc., what you find is that everyone's in the room because they're smart, right? Everyone deserves to be in that room. Everyone is smart and got stuff to offer and good ideas. But the ADs won't challenge the directors, and the directors won't challenge the EDs, and the EDs won't challenge the MDs, and so on, and let alone, you know, 2 levels above, which is suffocating to ideas and feedback both ways, and people, you know, being able to contribute around the room and give their advice and their input. But it also suffocates positive reinforcement, because it's pretty patronizing for an AD to turn around to an MD and say, I think that's a really good idea. That's a really good plan. Well done. You know, it almost sounds weird. It feels weird to sort of, you know, give upward encouragement and feedback. Whereas if everyone's around the table on a level playing field, then everyone feels, you know, the opportunity to say, that's a really good idea. That's a really good idea. I think you should go ahead and do that. And also, I'm not so sure about that. I don't think you should do that. Whereas, you know, and it encourages that discussion. So, and underneath that, you know, pretty standard, we've got, you know, consultants, managing consultants, and then managers, and then directors, like that. That's sort of the 4 levels up to the VP system. But at the moment, it's pretty fluid. I don't think we need to create a ladder with a business that's only 60 people. You know, it only gets sticky a bit later when you get to 400, 500, 600, 700 people, and then all of a sudden you've got to have 1 million levels, and it just gets convoluted.
Makes sense. So you've mentioned on the numerous occasions the mission, that people are bought into the mission. Tell us what is this mission, right? I'm getting the impression it's, you know, it's the fastest growing recruitment company, but what's the actual mission? How do you explain it when people are sat in front of you?
I mean, the mission is to build an incredible business. Like that is the mission. The mission is to build something that everyone can put their name to and be proud of. That first and foremost. I think if you build an incredible business, the money comes with it. and the success comes with it if you just focus on building an awesome business where people want to be and they want to be a part of that journey. I think obviously there are future opportunities for us around exits and payouts, and that's the reason we've created this, and we spent a lot of time and energy and money creating the share incentive scheme and an equity scheme to incentivize everyone. But we're a business, we haven't been through our first exit or second exit yet, and that tends to be where the proper money's made, throughout the business rather than just at the very top, which happens later. And I think that, I think in spreading some of the wealth throughout the business, it means that everyone's supercharged to really grow something quickly and hit targets. So obviously, in terms of tangibility, we've got a huge amount of collective experience around the boardroom with Adam as our chairman, Puffin Point, who are the lead investors in Spencer Ogden and their sale to private equity, Victoria Maloney from her time at S3, and the role I played at Faden in launching companies, scaling them globally and going through successful transactions. So I think there's a very good opportunity for everyone to do very well here in the future, not too distant future, hopefully. But it's not, I don't think, someone asked me the other day, well, what's your plan in all this? And I said, I don't really like, I think this isn't just about building something to sell and exit or whatever in the future. This is about building something which is incredible, seen as unprecedented, is something that is, everyone's super proud to go home and say they were a part of, something that reflects the world we live in terms of the way we work, diversity, all the way through the business, trusting and being a trusting and empowering business and letting people get on with stuff. And then we'll see what our options are in the future. And the better business we build, the more options we'll have. So if we focus on that, the rest of it should take care of itself at some point. I'm not, rather than setting the destination now and creating rules, parameters.
It just reminds me of like Man City in football,
Brilliant.
It's just, if you look at the infrastructure in that club, my club, but if you look at the way they've done it, the way they've like the city, I live like 5 minutes from the City Football Academy, and it's unbelievable, the facilities. Obviously they want to win everything and they want to make financial gains, but they're building just an incredible club. Like they're building, and the way that they've got that franchise model around the world in Melbourne and China and India, and they're just building an unprecedented club. And it feels a bit like that in the way that you've got the cash, you've got the expertise, and you're just saying fuck off to all the kind of traditional ways of doing things and think, why not? It's like
in many ways we are a lot like Liverpool. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's Liverpool. That's exactly, you're exactly correct. Yeah.
So what would you say you've got wrong in the last 18 months? Like what would you not do again?
It's lucky you asked that question close to the end, because I've made a lot of mistakes. That we could have spent half of this discussion talking about the errors that I made. Or actually no, if everyone's taking accountability for the success, they can take the problems too. I mean, so many mistakes. I think we got some of our verticals wrong initially. I think we relied too much on like researching what good areas to go after, rather than just, there's a lot of stuff out there, like what's a really good part of the market to go after. On paper it looks good, but until you're actually doing it, you don't really know if it's any good for your business or not, or the right kind of margins or recruitment style. So we should have just basically, trusted our instincts, got on the phones, made deals, and then be success led that way, rather than creating a structure off of paper. I think we probably should have panicked less in terms of our initial approach. I think we probably dropped our pants a bit on margins and probably signed some bad terms and, signed up to things that just weren't good for the business because we weren't sure if it was going to work. Like, I can say it now, but you're just like, yeah, a client, brilliant, get on board. Doesn't matter. We'll do it for free. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think we probably should have just backed ourselves a bit more. I think that, we probably should have diversified globally a bit quicker. We spent a lot of time working in the UK market because it's easy, when it's on your doorstep, you almost think you should, it's almost a bit like a restaurant at the end of your road that you go to all the time because it's there, but you don't really enjoy it. That's like the London market. Right? It's okay. It's a pretty good market. There are some wins to have in the market, but it's very saturated in terms of other recruiters, and that really drives the quality and down across the industry. It gives us a bad name amongst the end clients in the fintech world. And actually, I feel sorry for fintech companies in London that are constantly getting bombarded from so many different angles that aren't specialists. So we learned the hard way, and we ended up pushing out overseas into places like mainland Europe and North America, probably a bit later than we should have done. They're three big ones, but I can send you an email list of every other one at a later date. And there's more. There's more. It's an ongoing problem.
I think we're definitely going to have you back on in August to see if you do what you've said you've done. I need to hold you accountable now, and for my listeners' benefit, I need to have you back in. What's the one piece of advice you'd give anyone who's listening, who's a recruitment owner, who's thinking, "Fuck me, you've inspired me today." Like I've got a decent business. I've not probably thought about the growth scale at the same pace. I've thought of more of the classic organic growth. What advice would you give someone who's interested in thinking about, maybe doing similar things?
If I had to pick one piece, I think that, there are three rules that I live by. One of them already mentioned, which is one, surround yourself with people that threaten you in a good way. Surround yourself with people that are better than you and tell them they're better than you and let them get on with it. Right. That's the first thing. Don't try and be the smartest person in the room. Yeah. And secondly, I would say, if you're a recruitment business owner and you're about to go on a journey, like you got to keep your family close to you because you're going to need them. Like you are going to need them. Like, there are very few people that will take you for who you are, but, and I'm fortunate, not just in my family, but close friends of mine that, I'm still just like Brownie, the lad from school, that they'll just call me out on shit that, they're just like, and I think that's good because it doesn't all become a bit too serious. Do you know what I mean? It's not, there are actual problems in the last 12 months. The pandemic has shown what's really important, which is health and family. And recruitment's like, we're not building a nuclear rocket. We're not sending people to the moon here. Like, we've got a noble mission, but I think it's got to be kept in, you've got to keep it in, perspective. And then the third thing, which is personal to me, is just read about every single person that's built a successful business in the past and just take something from every book. Like, I've read books from terrible entrepreneurs and some really good ones, but there's something in every one. And, it's good. It's also good when you read about people that have done incredible things and you read about their dark days and how they've got it all wrong. And you're like, okay, it's not just me. It is meant to feel really, really difficult from the outset.
Wicked. James, I've loved it. 58 minutes, and I think we could have carried on all day, to be honest. But I've got a lot going on, and so have you. But I want to say thank you. Look, I've loved watching your journey. I've really enjoyed it so far. You're inspiring me. As you're talking, my brain is ticking and thinking, what do I need to do in my business and things I can change. The people watching live on LinkedIn, I imagine you've managed to do similar things for them. If anyone does watch today or listen back on the podcast, YouTube, etc., are you open to a quick chat if they wanted to just pick your brains? I know you're busy, but if they reach out to you is LinkedIn the best place?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of you to say so initially. Hopefully I haven't put my foot in it too much with people that I know that I've referred to. But of course, I think that, in recruitment especially, you've got to be, honor amongst thieves. Everyone's got to stick together and give each other advice because we get enough heat from the outside world. So
agreed.
Of course, absolutely, of course.
Lovely.
Thank you as always for listening to today's show. I truly, truly hope that you got value from it. That's the only reason I take time every week, is to ensure that my audience, future and existing recruitment owners, are learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. Today's episode was brought to you by Hoxo Media. I am the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media, and we are the world's leading content marketing and personal branding agency for recruitment businesses specifically. So we are working with over 200 agencies and 2,000 recruiters right now, both managing the brands, producing content, building written, video, podcast content for niche recruitment agencies all over the world, as well as coaching at a desk level individual recruiters in your businesses how to be better on LinkedIn. That's how to brand themselves. That's how to produce content. That's how to use the opportunity on LinkedIn to get traffic to their profiles and turn that into business. We're coaching people all over the world every single day. If any of that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean Anderson, a personal message on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to you. I'll see you soon.